going to call to order a regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items appearing on the agenda are requested to complete a speaker's card and file it with the secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Cards are available in the lobby. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be directed to the commission, not the audience. While Planning Commission is in session, all in attendance are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey the orders of the chair. Commissioner Powers, could you lead us? Oh, sorry, Sherry, could you do roll call first?
Chair Zabilla?
Here.
Vice Chair Jagiello?
Here.
Commissioners Merck?
Here.
Colsey?
Here.
Corbin?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
Nolan absent.
Okay, nope, sorry, I'm jumping the gun. I thought the Pledge of Allegiance came before everything, but we are doing our annual assignment of Planning Commission Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. Do I have any nominations?
Yes. I would like to nominate John to be the chair and Steve Colsey to be the co-chair.
Okay, so we're going to take it one at a time. So first we do the chair. So do we have any other nominations for chair?
I enthusiastically second John's nomination.
Thank you. We don't need a second, but it appears that we just need to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint John as chair.
Okay. Roll call. Oh.
Now we need a second? I'll second it.
Oh, now we need a second. Okay. Roll call, please.
Merck?
I'll abstain. Thanks.
Colsey?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Jagiello?
Yes.
Zabilla?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Congratulations, Commissioner
Thank you,
Merck.
everyone. That's,
Well, we can trade places now, and you can
I guess so.
select the vice chair.
On the rest of the meeting.
All right.
Goodbye, John.
Do you need to hit that thing one more time?
No, I can't.
No,
But here, we'll trade waters.
Too late.
she's just singing free at last, free at last.
Great.
Well, okay then. John?
It's not like you haven't been here before.
That's true.
There we go.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that vote of confidence. And we will see what happens as the year goes on. We now need recommendations for a vice chairperson. Is anyone?
I make a motion. Let's go right to the motion to select Mr. Steve Colsey for vice chair.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second that.
All right. Are there any other nominations?
I think Chester's doing a fine job. I'd nominate him as well.
I'd rather you do it.
Nominations first.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I nominate Steve Colsey. He nominates me, but I don't want to do it.
All right. So, any debate? No? Okay. Let us vote on the motion. Roll call, please. To have Steve as the vice chair.
I think we need a second, though.
Oh, did we get a second?
I second that.
Yeah, Ray seconded that the first time we came through.
Okay, Zabilla?
Yes.
Colsey?
Abstain.
Corbin?
Yes.
Jagiello?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay.
Here you go, Mr. Colsey. You get to move too. I think this was our original seating at one time.
It's like musical chairs.
Bobby, you want to switch with me just for fun?
Yeah. Should, maybe I could hear John. Holler at me, John.
Okay.
I was so used to that other drawer.
Thank you all for your patience. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Powers, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to the public communications portion of the meeting. Public communications is a time set aside during the Planning Commission meeting for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the Commission and will generally be referred to staff and/or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. Is there anyone who would like to speak on something not on the agenda? I would like to take the opportunity to commend Sunday Rylander and the Hilgers family for getting the lights put up at the skate park. I don't know if you guys have been by there. I was by there last night, and it's a huge achievement. And I was very proud of our town for pulling together that, but especially the people that were really involved in it. All right, we're going to move on to our consent items. This is the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning Commission, March 15th, 2017.
I move approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Do we have a roll call, please?
Isabella?
Yes.
Jagielo?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Quilisi?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. Could we start with Commissioner Isabella?
I have visited the site and I've had no ex parte contacts.
I visited the site and had no ex parte contact.
I visited the site, had no ex parte contacts.
I visited the site, had no ex parte contacts.
I've been by the site numerous times, but have not had any ex parte contacts. And Ray?
I visited the site and had no ex parte contacts.
All right, thank you. We're now going to move on to our public hearing items. The first item is item 3, design review permit, DRP 1704, for the addition of an office and trellis, demolition and remodel of a sunroom, demolition of the existing geodesic dome and shed at the rear of the property, and removal of a non-protected tree for a shop and gallery called The Canvas and Paper at 311 North Montgomery Street, assessors parcel number 021-0081-050. The general plan designation of the site is general commercial, and the zoning classification is commercial. Property owner is Neil Kreitman of the Monomas Foundation, and the representative Jane Carroll. Could we hear from staff on this, please?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. As the Chair has indicated, this is a request to improve property located at 311 North Montgomery Street. The proposal is to raise an existing geodesic dome and shed that are on the rear of the property, and also a portion of the main structure, the sunroom portion of the main structure, and to replace the sunroom portion of the main structure with some additional office area, and then convert the primary building into an art gallery. So it involves basically just replacing the existing footprint of the main structure with a new addition to the building. The rear of the property, which currently has the geodesic dome and shed on it, will be planted in a garden which will feature olive trees as well as drought-tolerant landscape features, flagstone walkways, and the like. Your staff report contains details on the compliance of the proposal with the city code. There are currently 4 existing parking spaces at the rear of the property, which includes a paved accessible parking space. I would note that in the development standard table, table C1, under parking, it makes reference to 4 covered spaces. That's an error. The spaces are uncovered. But it does comply with the code in terms of required parking. Also, Commissioner Quilisi pointed out to me that the width of the property, it indicates it's consistent with the city code. That should be indicated as being non-conforming. The 50-foot width is a non-conforming feature of the property. Also, under the public art ordinance discussion, on page 404 of your staff report, it makes reference to the Public Art Review Committee, PARC, and that should be referred to as the Committee to Accept Public Art, or CAPA. With that, and with the conditions that are recommended in your draft resolution, staff recommends approval of the permit as proposed. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that members of the Commission may have.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Winiger? Anybody? Mr. Quilisi?
Okay, in the proposed resolution, let me see. fixed that one thing on page 7, I think it was, no? Whatever it was. The resolution is by the Planning Commission, not the City Council.
That was on the, that's on the next item, I believe.
Oh, on
Vice
attachment
Chairman, yes.
B, okay,
yes.
yeah. Very good.
On the, I would point out that on the draft resolution, condition number 16, which states that no outdoor storage is permitted, Commissioner Quilisi and I did discuss that item, and I would suggest that additional language be added to indicate that that's during business operations, not during the construction phase of the project.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Yeah, oh, Mr. Kelly's still on.
Nope, thank you, sir.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Ray?
About number 16 was just mentioned, and I guess this is for my own information. Why isn't outdoor storage permitted? I don't know all the ordinances in the city,
That's
so.
commercial district.
It's generally a housekeeping matter so that businesses don't store stock or discarded material, trash, what have you, on the outside. It's a pretty standard condition in most communities that I've worked in.
And in VMU too, then?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Could we hear from the applicant?
Good evening, Jane Carroll. I am the designer of this project and the applicant for the owner, Neil Kreitman. This is a very fine project. He would like to use this space as a gallery to show rotations of his very fine collection of art. Probably just 2, 3, 4 paintings at a time. It's not a commercial space. It's not to sell art. It's simply to provide a quiet, contemplative spot where people can come and look at these paintings. So from the outside, it will remain architecturally pretty much the same, although the colors are going to be much more muted than they are at the moment. And the rather disheveled and recently unirrigated landscape will be replanted with drought-tolerant plants and a lovely little contemplative garden at the back. Even though it's not a requirement to provide funds for the public art, this is going to be a really fine addition to the city. He's not planning at the moment to advertise this. He sort of wants it to be discovered by people, but it'll be a lovely spot. So you've seen the color renderings. It's going to be quiet grays, pale greens, gravel, drought-tolerant plants. It'll be an attractive addition to that street, I think. Any questions?
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the representative?
Yes.
And it's more of a curiosity. The geodesic dome is being demolished. Is it being moved somewhere? Because
Yes,
they're pretty
sorry,
modular.
I called it demo, but in fact it's going to be removed, yes.
And rebuilt somewhere
It's
else?
going to be offered for sale to anybody who wants it. The skin is actually in fairly bad shape,
Yeah.
so whoever has it will need to do something about that. But yes, there's every intention to recycle it.
Okay.
To pass
Yeah,
it
that
on.
was my curiosity.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely structure, but
Yeah.
it's not needed and it's in the way of the garden and the parking.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Quilisi?
This is a commercial zone, C1.
It's a commercial
Will
zone.
there be any retail sales taking place on the site?
Possibly the odd book, but it would be very minor, extremely minor. It would be if there was an art book that related to the paintings. Nothing more than that.
So the paintings are just for display? They're not?
Paintings are just for display from his
interesting.
private collection. It's his gift to the city to be able to see this art. And he intends to keep it very minimal, so there may only be 2 or 3 paintings at a time, rotating.
It's not a large house, so.
It's not a large house, it's true.
I guess as a result of that, I would like to ask Mr. Winiger, is it a requirement in the commercial zone that there be retail sales of any substantial note, or is a display like this within the bounds of the commercial zoning?
No, this is entirely permitted. There's no requirement.
Okay, I hoped so.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I know Commissioner Nolan is not here tonight. She's our landscape expert.
Okay.
What you're saying about the landscape sounds fine, but I wondered, could you expand a little bit on how that's going to work?
Yes, so currently there's, along the southern border, there's a rather distressed-looking scruffy hedge, which is going to be taken out and planted with a nice green ligustrum. The front of the property has again got a rather hacked about silver maple, which is growing underneath that power pole and is beginning to die out. So that is coming out, and 2 olive trees will be in the front with a low myrtle hedge and gravel. Then the back of the property is going to have a hedged garden with a grove of olives in it and a fountain and a little spot to sit and possibly a sculpture. So it will be a very quiet, grey, green, soft, drought-tolerant look. One rather lovely rambling rose, Sally Holmes rose, over the trellis, which I think is the one we have here. Is that right? So,
Great, thank you. Ray, did you have a question?
I did, thank you. And so then the additional office space that's being built, that's just to run the admin of the gallery?
yeah, and that's on the footprint of the sunroom
Right, in the
at
back.
the moment. Yeah. So that's the whole of the space will be given over to the gallery, apart from a accessible bathroom
Mhm.
and a little storage area,
Mhm.
and then a small office at the back for the administration.
And it'll be open 5 days a week? or
It's open
something?
It's open 20 hours a week. It's going to be open 5 days a week. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. I don't have any speakers cards, but does anybody like to speak on this matter? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and turn it back to the Planning Commission. If there's no discussion, I'd entertain a motion, but
I'll make a motion. I mean, it's a perfectly fine project. I can't find anything wrong with it. And it's, I love the colors. I love what he's going to do. I mean, it's quite a thing to do for the community, put a little art gallery in there for people to use. So I can't see where that can go wrong.
all right.
So I'll make a motion to approve design review permit 17-04 for the addition of an office and trellis, demolition and remodel of a sunroom, demolition of existing geodesic dome and a shed in the rear of the property, and removal of non-protected trees for the shop and the art gallery called Canvas and Paper at 311 Montgomery.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second it if the motion maker will agree to an amendment, as Mr. Winiger noted, in condition 16, no outdoor storage permitted, if we could add the words during business operations at the end of condition 16.
Is that an appropriate addition? Yes, it is. I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, and I will second the amended motion then.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Could we have a roll call, please?
Isabella?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Quillisi?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing the gallery. All right, next item is item number 4, accessory dwelling unit and ordinance TA 1508, revising Article 17, Section 9, entitled Second Residential Units of Chapter 2 of Title 10 of the Ojai Municipal Code to establish revised standards in compliance with the state of California's new mandate regarding second units, and also considering additional local amendments to the city's second unit ordinance above the minimum requirements of state law. The proposed ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines, as the changes do not have the potential to cause a significant effect on the environment. The Planning Commission will make recommendations to the City Council. City Council is the final decision maker on this item. Could we hear from staff, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me state at this point that City Attorney Matt Summers extends his regrets. He wasn't able to attend this evening. He and I have, however, have had probably 3 hours of discussion regarding this item. I've also been involved in developing similar ordinance for another community. So with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and make the presentation this evening and answer the questions that I am able to answer. If we require more time based on your inquiries that require a legal response, then we can continue this item, but at least for the time being, I'd like to make some recommendations. As you have indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is a proposal for the Commission to present a revised accessory dwelling unit ordinance to the City Council for consideration. The city operates under an emergency ordinance at this point, which basically reflects the state regulations with respect to accessory dwelling units that apply to all communities in California. The Commission has had several study sessions on this over the last year and a half, I understand. It actually preceded the adoption of the state regulations, which have now been incorporated into the items that you have been considering all along. And at this point, I'd like to recommend some minor changes and respond to some comments that have been made both by commissioners and through my discussion with the city attorney. First, on page, this is attachment 8, page 3 of 13. At the top of the page, it says, "Now therefore the City Council." That's our error. That should read the Planning Commission. There's also a comma in the first line of paragraph A, purpose. That should be deleted. Thank Commissioner Vice Chairman Quilisi for bringing those to our attention. Also, the question was, there is a definition for home split. That is definition number 10 on attachment A, page 4 of 13. That is not reflected in the chart or the graph that you see here. And the reason for that, it was explained to me, is that essentially that is, for the most part, except for a minor addition that can be made for a separate kitchen or bathroom, that is supposed to be entirely within the footprint of an existing residence. So it was felt it wasn't necessary to include it. If the commission feels for clarity it would like to have a heading for home split in the chart, that can certainly be added. On page, and again on attachment 8, page 8 of 13, in the middle of the page is a column labeled number of units allowed on site. We would like to change that to number of ADUs allowed on site. So it's clear that that applies only to ADUs and not the total number of units.
So, Mr. Winiger, in that
Yes.
instance, when it says one ADU, that would mean 2 units actually on the site. Is that
Total,
correct?
2
Yep.
with the provision that I'm going to talk about right now. And that applies to guest houses, which is on the next page, again, in the middle of the page. There is, I think, some confusion, or there could be confusion, regarding whether or not a guest house may be permitted in addition to an accessory dwelling unit, or vice versa. So, and I believe that came up in a previous study session. And the response is that it really depends on the sequence in which the units are proposed. So, as I understand it, if there is a primary unit and an existing guest house, that guest house can be converted to an ADU, in which case that serves as the 2 units on the property, the primary and the secondary. If there's a primary unit and an existing second unit, you cannot add a guest house. If there's a primary unit and a guest house, And through the code would allow an accessory unit if it's totally within the primary unit. So that would be the home split. So that depends on the circumstances that exist on the property at the time that an ADU is proposed. So I'll work with Mr. Summers to clarify the language in those columns, because right now I think it could be interpreted a couple of different ways.
So, Mr. Winter, I can see where this is going to be really confusing for the general public.
Yes.
A guest house would be a unit that has bathrooms in it but no kitchen facilities?
correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
An ADU would actually have a kitchen as well as a bath?
That is correct. It's actually required to have a kitchen, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
just so that, because I know people are going to say, what's the difference?
Right, and as I was reading this cold, it looked to me like you could do both. And I just wanted to make sure there's clarity to the community on what that provides. And then on page, again, attachment A, page 10 of 13.
Can I ask you a question about
Yes.
that? Is the guest house a separate structure, and does it have to be a separate structure?
It doesn't have to be detached, no. It would have a separate entrance, but as the chairman indicated, it would not have a separate kitchen facility. On, let's see. Page 10 again, page 10 of 13, paragraph F, under standards and common. It says both primary and accessory dwelling units shall be connected to a public sewer. State law also allows accommodation through private septic systems. It depends on whether or not that system has the ability to accept a separate accessory dwelling unit. So this language would also be changed to address that particular issue. And then lastly, the question was raised as to whether or not garages can be converted by right, and the state law is very clear that, let me find the exact language. Where a single-family residence or accessory structure exists in any single-family residential zone, so can an ADU. Existing space includes a primary home or within an attached or detached accessory structure, such as a garage, carriage house, pool house, rear yard studio, or similar enclosed structures. So, with that, staff does recommend the Commission's consideration and recommendation of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance to the City Council. I'll be trying to answer any questions that members of the Commission may have.
So these few changes that you went through, are they going to be incorporated into the
Yes.
final things? So if we vote on this tonight, it'll include that?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there any questions for staff? Chester?
Okay, excuse me. You brought up on page 10 of 13 the sewer hookup on F, and you mentioned septic systems. I'm not sure I'm seeing allowable septic systems. The current ordinance does not allow second dwellings for houses that are on a septic. That's correct. And you were saying something about a septic in F here, and I don't see it written there. Can you repeat what you said about the septic system?
Yes, it's ADUs would be potentially permitted on septic systems if that system is demonstrated to have the capacity. State law requires that.
And where is that written here?
It's not. I
He was
raised it as
adding
an
some
issue.
words.
Got it, that's a submission. Okay,
Yes.
that was one of my questions, because that was one of the things I wanted to bring up. The other thing that we bantered around a lot was the ability to build another, and I don't even know what to call it, because I used to call it an accessory building, but now we've adapted that to the second dwelling. But an art studio, for instance, a place of work. How is that addressed in here? I don't see that anywhere.
They're not addressed. That would still be permitted as allowed by the city code.
Got it. So that's just allowed by city code.
Correct.
So,
Got it.
so an art studio is different from a guest house?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
And the other thing on page 4 of 13, it talks about living area and defining living area, and it just says basement and attics. I think that needs to be defined a little bit better, because a basement and attic could mean a whole lot of things to a lot of people, and that square footage really does come into play.
Yeah, those are defined on page 3, attic
Sort
and
of.
basement.
Sort of.
Do you have
Sort
to
of.
be able to
Yeah.
stand in the attic?
Well,
or, you know,
that's what I
is
would
it a
like to, I would like to
peak
get
or-
a better definition.
And that, Commissioner, you're referring to which definition now? Habitable space, did you say?
Number 11.
Number 11. Oh, living area.
And it says,
Okay.
for instance, it says attic on page 3 of 13. You know, you can stand up, for instance, it says, means the area located between the ceiling of the top story of a building and the building's roof, and not usable as habitable or commercial space. That doesn't give me head clearances.
Okay.
You know, I think we need head clearances, because people can, you know, I've seen people living in, you know, if you're in a Cape Cod house, the side walls come in down to 5 feet, and then they come up at an angle. So I think we want to define that a little bit better, because there are people, that does come into play. Let's see, the basement means,
Okay, very good.
I have a question too, regarding the 50% constraint that we put on the new accessory units. 50% of the.
Of the existing floor area? Mm-hmm, yes.
So, and that includes attics and basements.
That is
Well,
correct.
We don't really have basements here, but if the premise is that that will keep it in scale with the primary unit, what happens if you have a garage that's attached to your primary unit and it's part of the mass? I don't understand why that can't count in your 50%, because it is part of the whole scale of the unit.
I think that's entirely up to the discretion of the commission and the city council.
Do you have a
you
thought
realize
on
the
that?
50% is only applies to adjoining new attached.
No, we added that for everything.
Well, we did. However, I was hoping that was going to be aligned with the size of the lot. But I think, yeah, I think we may have.
In the first, on page
Minutes that we
8
had
of
are from March, though,
13,
not from last
maximum
month.
floor area is indicated there.
All right, let's see. Yeah, 50% is across the board. That is
Yes.
correct. 1,250. Yeah, on that, I was wanting to not have a minimum lot size and yet use that formula.
Well, I'm not in favor of, I mean, I'm not against getting rid of the minimum lot size.
That's,
I think the state code says you can build an accessory dwelling unit, whether by conversion or new construction, by right, and the state code doesn't refer to any minimum lot size. So does that
The state law does not prescribe a lot size. It allows communities to prescribe a lot size if they so
Okay.
choose.
So if the state code is silent, then the city can set whatever rules it wants?
That is, in that instance, that is
This
correct.
case, okay.
Which we discussed ad nauseum the last time we were here.
It is in the minutes, item 2
Yes.
on page 10.
Yeah.
Your consensus vote.
Right.
Any other questions, Mr. Colisi?
Yeah,
I
I-
have a lot of Post-its there. so-
I have a lot of tags. So the home split, are you saying in the table that's provided, that home split is basically the third column in? Or the
No, and
middle?
I think we discussed that yesterday. I thought
I
that was,
wasn't-
I thought that was the case, but that is not necessarily the case. So,
Is a home split then different from all 5 columns that are there?
it does, and what Mr. Summers explained to me is that because it's, for the most part, and could be entirely within the envelope of the existing, or the footprint of the existing structure, they chose not to add a column here.
But it might not be.
From my standpoint, as a planner, I would actually prefer the additional column. for the home split. But that's something
I
that,
think that would be better for clarity for the citizens, but then that begs the question of what are all the entries that correspond to home split, because we don't have that column right now.
correct.
Well, how is home split different from
Well, that's what I was asking.
Attached within
Is it
the
the same as the
existing
third
interiors?
column?
It would be-
Or is it not?
How-
And it
how
says
would it be
not.
different?
I think it would be almost identical to that column, to the middle column there, the new attached accessory dwelling units solely by conversion of existing interior space. But because it does allow for a minor addition of square footage, there might be a situation where setbacks would apply. So you might find, so again, in that column there, utilizes existing setbacks might be slightly different.
So is this language about that it has to contain a minimum of 2,000 square feet of living space also applicable to
That is,
anything
yes.
constructed within the envelope of an existing home has to be a minimum of 2,000 square feet,
For the home split, that is true.
which is basically carving up any existing home into two units?
Correct.
As long as it's 2,000, minimum 2,000 square feet.
A house has to be a minimum of 2,000. But then why is it, okay, but
But you can't, the 650 applies to the amount of space you can carve out, I believe.
it says each has to be a minimum of
And this only-
650, but
so-
that's contradictory.
And
because
again, it
that
only applies in those zones.
Oh, but you can, you can only split a home in those zones?
You can only do the home split in those homes where you can do the addition. In the case of the that middle column there.
Right.
I wish we could come up with an abbreviation for it, but then the unit solely within the conversion, that could occur in the VMU, it could occur in an R1 zone.
Right.
That's the distinction.
Okay, we do need another column, I think.
That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. And I'd like to go on in the discussion, but when we get done, I'd like to see us table this item until the next meeting so that we can see the recommended, what do you call it?
It's for the home split.
Yeah, so we can see what the entire text of what we're recommending to the city council would be. But that'll come later. So you said earlier, Mr. Winiger, that because the state code was silent on a particular matter, the city could do what it wanted. Well,
Depends on the issue.
okay, depends on the issue. In the definition on page 4 of 13, attachment A, home split, it is silent on a number of residential areas, at least R1, and maybe others. Does this mean that since the code is silent on that, it is not absolutely prohibited that someone do a home split in an R1 area?
Yes, I believe that could be accomplished. I believe the reason it wasn't was that, going back through the record, is that the commission felt only the larger parcels should be eligible for a situation where an addition is involved.
Okay, but this does not say that smaller parcels are prohibited.
The home split would only be permitted in those zones enumerated. The R.
I'm sorry, okay, is located in a legal lot.
Yes.
Very good, understand. Yeah, if we have a sixth column that says home split, I think that'd be much better. Let me see. You talked about the number of ADUs allowed on site, page 8 of 13, that row there. I thought that the number of ADUs, I thought that any ADU that is built by right is not counted in density measures. And everything in this row here says not to exceed applicable general plan density. So I'm confused at this point as to whether the state law has just overridden that row in the table. Because
I think you're thinking of the growth management.
I'm sorry?
I think you're thinking that, I'm just wondering if you're conflating the density allowed in the general plan with growth management. They're exempt from the growth management stipulations, but I don't think that they're exempt from general plan density.
That is correct. The ADU units are exempt from the growth management ordinance. Quite honestly, and Mr. Summers and I had a lot of discussion about this because I think there's conflicting guidance in the state law, state regulations concerning this general plan density issue. I would think this is something that we should come back to you on, quite frankly.
Okay.
I would prefer that this line not refer to general plan density, but I think that's something that needs to be fleshed out.
Okay, I'd appreciate it because it's not clear to me, and so I try to play like an ordinary citizen walking into the city hall and saying, I want to do something, is it allowed? And from this, I can't tell.
Right.
Okay.
Just to give you a summary on this, in this issue, the law makes it clear that the accessory unit is basically just considered just that, accessory to the main structure, almost as if it isn't a separate dwelling unit when in fact it is. But then it also makes reference to general plan densities. So on one hand, it's saying you shouldn't regard it as a separate dwelling unit,
Okay.
but on the other hand, it should respect general plan density. So I think there's some confusion there.
I may have missed that in reading 65852. Okay, on the row in the table entitled Guest House, you explained the purpose of this very clearly, that if you have an ADU, you can't build a new guest house, but if you have a guest house, you can by right build a new ADU.
No. You can
Right?
convert, you can convert it.
You can convert the guest house to an ADU.
To an ADU.
But once you have that, you cannot add an additional
Can't have
guest
both.
house.
Is this because the state law is silent again on guest houses, and therefore the city can regulate guest houses in any way that it wishes?
The state law is clear that you can convert a guest house or pool house or whatever.
Right.
It is silent on whether a community wants to allow the additional guest house in addition to the ADU.
Yeah, okay, so you're regulating guest houses, not ADUs.
That is correct.
Okay, so an ADU, whether by conversion or by new construction, is by right, but once you have one, you can't build another new guest house.
You've precluded that option,
Okay.
correct?
Okay.
That brings up a point a couple of times about, again, I brought up earlier the art studio, the other type of accessory building. And the number of units allowed, we're talking about ADUs, I would assume, because that's in this chart and that's the subject. But somehow that subject needs to be addressed for clarification for people coming over the counter and saying, well, you know, is it one unit? Is it one ADU? I know it's in the code here, but it's conflicted with the idea of those accessory buildings, and people are going to want to ask that question.
Right,
yeah.
And I think it needs to be in here and clarified.
I think that's a good suggestion. I don't know whether the Ojai code refers to them as accessory structures or buildings or whatever the case. Different communities call them different things. But I think your intention is to still allow a studio, a greenhouse, a
Because it says
garden
number of
shed.
units allowed on site, and that's pretty general.
Yeah.
And then somebody's going to say, okay, I want one ADU, but I also want a,
So we'll add clarity to language regarding other accessory.
Well, and I
Structures.
think that threshold has been any conditioned space. Really, a guest house is any conditioned space, so.
no, not necessarily.
But a studio might not have a bath in
Yeah, I
it,
mean,
and a guest house does.
Right, but I'm just saying, I don't think that that's been clear. I don't think it's
Yeah.
been clear what the definition of a guest house is.
No,
I
it's
have
clear.
heard-
It's in the code. It has a full bathroom.
Okay.
And it has a separate, right, Sherry? I come across this so many times.
Separate exterior
Yeah.
entrance.
Okay.
Well, yes.
Okay, but then a studio would be a conditioned space, an
It's-
art studio.
It's
would be a
very easy to
conditioned space
turn into a
without-
guest house. There's no doubt about it.
Correct, yeah.
But at the same time, there are people that don't have that.
But it's
that
not a
intention.
shed.
But as we're
But an office,
saying,
for instance,
well,
if somebody wants an office,
Understood.
an art studio or an office might be indistinguishable from a shed, from a conditioned shed, in that none of them necessarily have a bath. If they have a bath, it's a guest house.
Correct.
So we have at least 3 different kinds of accessory units here. Okay.
I believe the accessory unit as an art studio, that what it leaves out is the bath. It has a half bath, it
Okay.
allows for a half bath. Is there a clear definition on that, Sherry?
The city has no code on accessory units, not dwelling, but accessory units.
Buildings.
There's no existing code.
See, that's pretty
Okay.
ambiguous.
That-
That's going to lead to a lot
That's
of...
a big hole in
Yeah,
the
it's a big,
code,
big
yeah.
giant hole, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see this, besides adding a 6th column to the table, I'd like to see an explanation of ADUs versus guest houses versus studios versus sheds, if there's a difference between the last two, other than
Yeah, all
ability.
all accessory structures on
Yeah.
the site and what's allowable.
Yeah,
Probably need a definition and address them in
Right.
this table.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah.
okay. So a guest house is not a residential unit?
No, it's not.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense in the context of the state law. Okay. Very good.
Thank you. Any other questions for Stan? This is a public hearing, and I'd love to hear from people in the audience. I don't have any speakers cards, but here comes Mr. Ulrich with one, so off we go.
There we go.
William Ulrich, 487 Gridley Road. Good evening.
Good evening.
Planning
Good evening.
Commissioner, Mr. Winiger. I missed your deliberations the last time. I understand that there was, per Isabella's comment, there were several iterations of the discussion regarding the density issue. I'd like to refresh, since everyone's looking at the proposed recommendation of City Council, for the benefit of folks that haven't recently reviewed 1069, the bare language of the statute and the intent. And once again, that's 65852.2. This is section 3I2, 3, and 5. No other local ordinance, policy, or regulation shall be the basis for the denial of a building permit or a use permit under this subdivision. It's pretty broad. This subdivision establishes the maximum standards that local agencies shall use to evaluate proposed accessory dwelling units on lots zoned for residential use that contain an existing single-family dwelling. No additional standards other than those provided in this subdivision or subdivision A shall be utilized or imposed, except that a local agency may require an applicant for a permit issued pursuant to this subdivision to be an owner-occupant, or that the property be used for rentals of terms longer than 30 days. The accessory dwelling unit shall not be considered in the application of any local ordinance, policy, or program to limit residential growth. Now, relative to the proposed minimum lot size for new attached accessory dwelling units and new attached accessory dwelling units attached to an existing legal primary unit, I guess everybody's okay with found conditions, in other words, by an existing property with an existing garage or an existing accessory structure. But where someone wants to build a new accessory dwelling unit or add one to an existing structure, second story, the imposition of 10,900 square foot minimum lot sizes in the R zones and 7,500 in the VMU would seem to be in contradiction to this. notwithstanding Mr. Summers' interpretations and your conversations with Mr. Summers, Mr. Winiger. I believe the intent of the state law is being avoided, and this is being, these minimum lot sizes for new construction is a means of controlling residential growth, which is a contravention of the state law. It's very clear. Now, you folks want to make a recommendation to the city council, and the city council is importune enough to approve it. High degree of likelihood somebody's going to lose if this gets challenged in court, because it is the intent of the state law has been because too many communities have used residential growth as a means of curtailing or preventing affordable housing. And Ojai's been doing that, and now it looks like you folks are going to recommend them continue to do it. And that's not the intent of the state law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Mr. Winiger, do you have any response to that? Or
I think it's fair to say that the state law can be interpreted a couple different ways in regard to the lot size issue.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Clifford, you would like to jump in here?
I have a village mixed-use lot, 7,500 square feet. I have an existing house on it, and I have an existing separate dwelling that's got its own bathroom, its own kitchen. It was approved in 1985. We've always called it a guest house, but I'm not sure what it would be called now.
By state law, it's now an ADU.
Does it have a kitchen in it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. What I propose to do is to remodel the front house and put an office over the garage, which is in between the additional dwelling unit and the front house. And I've run into this problem of having another building that has a bathroom in it, a half bath in it. And so I'm hoping that the work going on here will clarify my ability to have an office. The front house, I don't want to increase the footprint. I want to make it smaller. I want to put more trees on the property and decrease the size. So there's not enough room there for my office. My wife and I both work independently. We need an office. We want to go above the garage. And we've run into problems getting that through. And so I'm hoping that this will illuminate that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm aware of that issue. I don't think it's addressed specifically by this ordinance, but we believe that there's an interpretation that can be made that can accommodate that potentially. And city attorney and I are taking a fresh look at that.
Good. Thank you.
So this adding a second story on the garage with a half bath, if it's a half bath, then it's not a guest house. It's just a second story on the garage.
It may be part of the main structure. That's what we're looking into right now.
This would not be part of the main structure.
But it could be interpreted to be part of the main structure.
Thus, the definitions that need to come forth for
Yes.
all those
Yes.
accessory structures.
I think, yes, a good deal more
That would be
clarity is
helpful.
indicated here.
And the fact that it's in the BMU adds another wrinkle, so it's just,
Yeah.
we're looking
Right.
at that.
It gets wrinkly.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford. I don't see anyone else in the audience, so I'm going to close the public hearing. We've had quite a bit of discussion already. Is anyone prepared to make a motion on this?
Well, I'm in favor of moving it to another meeting because there's so much clarification that needs to be done on this that I wouldn't want to make a motion on this right now. It needs to come back to us in a much more edited fashion with all those things that we requested. There's too many holes in it. And I think we just let them go at it again. And hopefully the next time our attorney can be present so that way we can get to the core of some of the other issues. I think there's some work to be done on the the codes and or if there's any regarding these accessory structures, that definitely is a major component to the definition of what you can do on a particular lot. I mean, that's critical. So there's just, to me, there's too many holes in this. And I do want to go on record that I'm still in favor, a record again, of removing the lot size and allowing the, and I would like you to just consider this, because it's obviously going to come back to us, allowing the setbacks and the lot coverage to determine, because it scales, it automatically scales, and allows for everyone, if they have the ability, to put a smaller unit on their property. And that will help to add affordable, by design, housing to the market.
Hear,
and
hear.
I think, and so, but when we put it up for vote last week, last time, I believe you voted against it.
I gave up
And
arguing. Yeah.
So did Commissioner
Yeah.
I think I was exhausted.
Gorman.
So, Mr. Winiger, let me ask you, if we were to continue this, do you have an estimate of what kind of time frame you would need to bring it back to us?
We would hope to bring it back to your next meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, next meeting? Okay.
That's just 2
Bobby?
weeks away.
We'll see.
Well,
I'll have to have, Mr. Summers is out the rest of the week. I'll have to speak with him
okay.
regarding what the turnaround time on it.
The reason I say that is if we make a motion and approve a motion to continue this item to a date certain, then it will not have to be renoticed and all that stuff. And if it's to a date uncertain, then it's like starting all over again.
That's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that you continue it to your next meeting. If we need to trail it 2 more weeks, we'll certainly do
All right,
that.
I see, okay. Bobby, you had a,
I just wanted to clarify my position on that issue. When we went around the first time, it was either the 50% or the minimum lot coverage. And at that point, I wasn't sure how I felt about the 50%, so I went with the minimum lot coverage. But then when we went around the second time, we added the 50% to the minimum lot coverage. That was not exactly my intention. So after ruminating on this issue, I think the 50% does take care of it and maybe adds for a little more creativity.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of that same thing. The 10,900 is a strange number for me. It's slightly larger than a quarter of an acre, and it excludes every quarter acre lot in the city from eligibility for any of this stuff, and I am not in favor of that. If we could just take out that and leave lot coverage, setbacks, and the 50%, and say whatever the minimum is of all those things considered, that's what you can build, I'd be very happy with that.
All right. Ray, did you have anything?
Well, first I want to thank Mr. Quillisi for his due diligence and all the questions you brought up. And I completely agree. Let's look at this again. And I'm good with Mr. I wanted to call you Vice Chair because your sign still says that, but Mr.
J.
Mr. J. Gello.
Mr.
Yep.
J. Yeah, I'm good with that, going with the.
Okay.
Going with the lot
Chester, do you want to
coverage.
make a motion, and then we
Well,
can?
yeah, well, I'd like to make a motion to move this to the next meeting.
Continue it.
To continue the item to next meeting. But I also like to get a new vote, you might say, amongst the commissioners on whether or not we can remove the maximum lot size, to just remove it and allow the site coverage, the lot coverage, and the setbacks to determine what can
I
be done.
was thinking you could make that part of your motion.
Well, let's make that, yeah, that's.
That would be-
Mr. Chairman, I prefer if those were 2 separate.
separate
So
things.
let me make a
All right.
motion to remove the minimum lot size and allow the setbacks and the lot coverage to determine what can be built
Remain
on
in
this.
the table,
Yes, and the 50% coverage
All right.
remain to be the criteria to determine what can be built on a particular lot.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Bobby seconded. All right. Do we have any discussion on this?
I'd just like to point out that the county has been very clear that they think a minimum lot size of an acre is appropriate for the Ojai Valley. We are already substantially reduced from there, and to speak to Mr. Ulrich's point, the law is also very clear that agencies have the right and the ability to constrain the law in whatever way they, in certain areas, and this is one of them. So we do have the right to be more restrictive, and we were not contravening the law by doing so. So again, just want to reiterate, I'm not in favor of removing the minimum lot size. I think it's going to create a lot of unintended consequences, not the least of which is to continue to pave over our beautiful open green spaces and create streets that are nothing but congested with cars. So I continue to oppose removing that minimum lot size, which everyone is very comfortable with in the sense of it's familiar. We all know that's our number here, so it is an odd number, I agree, but it's one that everybody knows.
Thank you. Any other comments? Could we have a vote, please?
Zabilla?
No.
Jagiello?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Quillisi?
Yes.
Burke?
No.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay, so that, we're going to direct staff then to add that into the,
Right.
or to amend it so that we can do that. So then the next question is, when do we see this again?
And we talked about continuing it to the next meeting.
Right.
So I make a motion to continue this item to the next meeting.
All right, do we have a
I'll
second?
second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Could we have a roll call, please?
Zabilla?
Yes.
Jagiello?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Quillisi?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for your input, and we will, you certainly can.
The comment I would like to make about the vote regarding lot size. My gut feeling is, even if we're going with lot size and setbacks, I remember Chester a couple months ago going, there were only 7 units built in the last X number of years. I think, however that vote would have gone, I don't think we're going to see hordes of homeowners building ADUs. Even at a 300 square foot size, the cost can be prohibitive once you bring in all the permitting and sewage lines and all of that. So I just don't even think we're going to see that many built, whichever way that vote goes. So I'm certainly aligned with Commissioner Zabilla's feeling regarding green space and open space, but I don't feel it's going to be that impacted in the neighborhoods. I just don't think there's going to be that many built. There could be more if the city wants to look at, and it's a completely different conversation, what types of things can be built in terms of cob homes or straw bale or allowing for yurts, and that's a whole nother conversation about alternative building methods, which are less expensive. But as it stands now, I don't think we're going to see a plethora of ADUs being built.
I think we may see with the legal non-conforming units brought forward, currently non-legal non-conforming units brought forward to be legal non-conforming. I think we'll see quite a few more units available for housing. Maybe they're already being used for housing, I'm not sure. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of new construction under this. I think you're right about that.
right.
I wanted to note also for the commission and for the television audience, if you will, a piece of this state code, that's the California Government Code 65852.2, specifically paragraph F2, which you'll find in attachment B, page 4 of 5, it says accessory dwelling units shall not be considered new residential uses for the purposes of calculating local agency connection fees or capacity charges for utilities, including water and sewer service. As a result, I'm glad, I do not believe that the Ojai Valley Sanitary District is currently following this part of the state law, because they're still charging people $16,000 plus for new connections. But
They're not a local agency, they're a special district.
Yeah.
it says, though, including water and sewer service.
They're not a local agency, they're a special district. So they don't, a local agency is a city or a county. It's not a special district. So they are not following it, and I hope everybody in TV land does understand that the sanitary district will charge when they find them for those sewer hookups, and they are aligned with other very powerful sanitary districts who feel the same way. So I just hope we aren't misleading our citizens.
May be beaten down on this point.
I believe we will be,
Okay.
or they will be.
Well, at the current time, the city requires a will-serve letter, which
The city council just
they just decided
changed
not
the
to.
rules, so the city is no longer requiring will serve letters as a condition of permitting.
Wow. What do you know?
So it's catch me if you
Interesting.
can.
When did that happen?
Last city council meeting.
Yeah, the one I was supposed to be at, I didn't make.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to item 5, which is topics to take at the special joint meeting with the city council next Tuesday night. Anything that anybody would like to discuss with the city council? It sounds like these ADUs may be a topic of discussion, but
They're going to get the amend, they're
yeah,
going to
they're
get
going to get
our.
our recommendation,
Yeah.
so I don't know that we need to discuss it
Yeah.
with them.
Well, they won't get our recommendations by next week.
No,
That's
yeah.
when the joint meeting is.
Yeah.
But I think that's a very appropriate topic, and if we can come forward with the discussions that we've had here tonight and say to the city council, is this along the lines of what you're looking for, or do you have real heartburn about some particular item? I think that would be useful.
That might be interesting, yeah. Anything else that anybody wants to discuss? Bobby?
I would like to discuss the school parcel
Uh-huh.
on Ojai Avenue. I think that could be a pivotal parcel in terms of the direction that the town goes. And I think that perhaps it's an opportunity to bring in something other than tourism. I'd love to see something, either, a business that will actually create interesting jobs that will attract people, or a school, not an elementary school, but an upper level school that will bring in professionals, teachers, people going to school. I'd love to see a housing component be part of that. There's so much dissension now in the town, and I'd like to talk about how the city council can address that in a positive way and in a kind of peacemaking way. There's a petition going around to override the vote about the tourism district. The people asked for a compromise. It went from 10 years to 3, and that sounds like a compromise to me. I think it's
2% to 1, I think.
Well, I think it's a lot of energy being put into something negative as opposed to being put into something positive, and talking about some other alternative things that could be done in the town to bring in revenue and to support the businesses that are here.
Are you
So I
talking
think
about
that's a really
Chaparral?
important
Are you
topic.
talking about
Chaparral
Chaparral?
School.
That's school board property,
Yeah.
That's not city property.
Well, the
No, but it's-
city is, the city's making not exactly a bid, but the proposal of interest, so that they have the option to kind of stall that being sent out for use. And I think that, I think it's an important piece of land, and I would like to see it being considered in a good way for the town.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that because when the issue of the school board declaring that property surplus for the purpose of initiating discussions with someone
Right.
about what to do with the property, the council's initial reaction, it seemed to me, although I'm not sure they ever voted on it, was to say that the city was not interested in discussing that
I think at the
with
last
the,
meeting.
with the
they
school
changed
district.
that.
But then at the last meeting, they voted to say, yes, we do want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well, there is somebody interested in the parcel, and
well, I'm
they're
sure,
interested in making a
or
hotel out of
portions
it.
of the parcel, for that matter.
Yeah.
But since that would have to do with land use, I think it's an appropriate thing for us to at least try to understand what direction the council's going and what part we can do to further the council's ends with regard to that property.
Sounds good. Chester?
No.
Okay, right?
There's something about water, but I don't know how to articulate it.
It's going to be a problem going forward, I can tell.
Water's a forever.
Other than state hookup,
Yeah.
there's some conversation to be had about land management and the sustainability committee and the beta project over on Golden West of curb notching and like all of that.
Oh,
Well, we had development standards, and we made some headway on development standards. And remember, we have an hour.
Yes, no, I
We
get
have an
it.
hour. I mean, I think,
yeah.
you know, water or ADU, I mean, I think what you're saying is valuable, Bobby. I just don't see that there's time to really open up a completely new
1 hour
conversation.
meeting, we're going to get through one topic.
We're going to get through one topic.
inadequately.
That's how it usually works.
I just would like to throw it out.
I agree,
there,
because-
I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree, because it's really, the jury's out on the Chaparral building anyway. The city doesn't even know what they want to do with it yet. They don't have a proposal on the
As
table.
far as we know.
Yeah, so, until there's something a little bit more developed, there's not much we can
Yeah.
do as a
All right.
planning commission serving the city council until we see what they have in mind. And we can put some
They have
context.
So we're back to
anything in
ADUs.
Well,
Yeah.
that's up to
Well,
them.
Well, yeah, I think the ADU
Just saying maybe
is
it's
probably the
suggestion.
priority.
Sufficiently
And-
complex.
And there is a conversation to be had about land management and, tearing up some of the hardscapes for permeability into the water table and some things that are precursors to hooking up to state water and really looking at what the commitment is to infrastructure and our water conservation and collection.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'll try and bring this all up at the council meeting.
We have a council.
Not
here.
particularly optimistic, but we'll see what happens. Next is item 6, director decisions, which we have a table in our,
Yes, on tab 6, you have a table that shows recent decisions.
any items that anybody has.
Not sure there are any new ones since your last meeting.
Question?
Yeah.
The item on arcade pennants, it says that's gone to the HPC?
Yes.
What does the HPC have to do with arcade pennants?
The arcade is a historic landmark, so
You have to get their permission to put up, every time someone wants to put up a pennant, it goes through the HPC?
there's actually an adopted policy, I believe adopted by the city council. It states the circumstances in which the HPC can consider banners. It provides, prescribes standards for those banners and pennants. And there's actually a calendar that there are about a half dozen or so events that
Just
are
the-
regularly
It's the first time, and then
voted.
each year it's a zone class.
And the HPC maintains that calendar, I guess?
Sherry does.
Well,
I mean,
Sherry does everything,
yes.
but on behalf of the HPC?
Yes.
Does this count the banners that go across Ojai Avenue between the
They're just-
arcade and the post office?
No, these are
Or
just
just the things that hang on the arcade?
just the ones that are in the arches of the arcade.
Okay,
27 arches. I believe.
curious about that, thank you.
In ancient times, those all came to the planning commission, and we actually approved them.
And the pergola across the street.
Oh, thank you. Yes, correct. It does include the pergola. Thank you, Sherry.
All right, future agenda items. We have our joint meeting with City Council next Tuesday. Oh,
Question, I was
sorry,
still
Ray.
reading this on the decisions. Could you clarify 17-05, the Rainbow Bridge, the director's exemption for interior expansion? I don't get,
Yes, my recollection is that they're just expanding into an adjacent space.
got it.
So there's no exterior change at all?
I know-
it's just
The
the-
director's exemption was because there's just two minor exterior things, roof mount equipment, to make sure it was screened, and changing a window to a door.
Thank you, that's what I, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
So then we're on future agenda items. So I noticed we have the museum gates on May 17th. I know there's a Kappa meeting on those gates.
There's actually a joint meeting next Thursday between the Historic Preservation Commission and the CAPA. So this is tentative, but we're hoping that you'll see the DRP on that date.
Thank you. And after May 17th, we have no idea what happens. Do we have some items?
There's a host of things that
Planner
might show
Higgins
up.
said he wants to put 334 East Ojai Avenue on June 7th.
Okay?
Okay. Great.
I
Thank you
just
very
want to
much.
encourage everyone to get their vacation times in, since the summer's coming up, and I
That's
will
true.
give you mine. I'll be gone most of August, going to Scotland this year. So, just want to let you know.
Good on you.
Yeah, I'll get my kilt on. Get my kilt on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's it.
Fun.
And I will be absent the 6th of September, 2 days after Labor Day. I will be in Texas.
That's going to be hot.
Yes. I didn't choose the time.
Okay, thank you. I believe that brings us to our city council liaison. Oh, no, it doesn't. Sorry, Randy. We have planning commission committee reports, which apparently, Mr. Jagiella, did you attend the meeting on?
Unfortunately, I did not attend. I tried to, but I did not make it back from
You
LA.
can still watch it online.
I am going to watch it online.
And
Report of May
Complete
17th.
Streets, do we have anything to report on Complete Streets, Mr. Quilisi?
We had a very spirited meeting this afternoon. I'm sorry Commissioner Nolan couldn't be here. We had a great deal of discussion about the ATP grant. This is
Active transportation.
active transportation programs. This is the 2.8 or so, $2.5 million grant from the state that will allow us to upgrade Highway 150 and Highway 33 within the city limits. And not quite all of that, it turns out. South 33 past the Vaughn Shopping Center really is, there's nothing planned to change in there. We also talked about sidewalk infill. This is one of the things that is on a priority list for the Public Works Director, Greg Grant. And we agreed that the number one project for sidewalk infill, or in this case reconstruction, would be on the west side of Montgomery, on the west side of South Montgomery. As you leave Ojai Avenue and go down the west, go south on the west side of Montgomery, there are a couple of previously constructed driveways and curb cuts and all of that there, which evidently slope quite a ways back toward the buildings and make it very difficult for people in wheelchairs, motorized or otherwise, to get from Ojai Avenue to the Art Center. And so that's the first thing to work on. The second thing I can't remember right now, but it's also downtown somewhere. There's only $40,000 in this year's sidewalk infill budget, and we're told if that were done all in one place, that would get us maybe 300 feet of new sidewalk. but if it's chopped up in pieces, then it's going to cost more for each piece, more than that average dollars per foot of sidewalk or whatever. We are also talking about the Complete Streets Master Plan, and I believe that will come back to the Planning Commission in the first meeting of June. That was Mr. Grant's estimation today, that we would see that. And there's a great deal of churn in the committee about whether or not the current edition, which is about version 8 of the Complete Streets Master Plan, is sufficient. But the overwhelming thought is that we've been at this for a year and a half, and we should recommend something to the City Council, and then as we see the need to modify it, that we recommend subsequent modifications to the City Council. For example, there's a discussion in there now about neighborhood electric vehicles, but there's no real discussion in the plan about motorized wheelchairs or scooters. And there are members of the Complete Streets Committee that think those things ought to have at least equal billing. But I think the consensus at this point is that we should, as the commission, see that thing the first meeting in June, two meetings from now, and make our decisions about whether to recommend it to the City Council.
Okay.
That's all of my report, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Haney, it's our City Council liaison.
So I was sitting back there quietly thinking what to say as I walk up here. So first of all, I would like to say thank you so much for the past chair and the past co-chair. You guys did an incredible job last year, and welcome to the new chair and the new co-chair. You've got some big shoes to fill. So aside from that, I think the second thing I wanted to touch on is what Bobby Corbin was talking about, and that's energy in the community and how we can best utilize it or bring it to something that's more positive and more forward-thinking. And I don't necessarily want to use the word progressive, but that's what comes to mind. But we have a lot of great people in this community. And we sometimes get caught up in this either or versus let's just put that aside and let's start thinking about what's in the best interest of us. And I think that this commission could be the leaders of that. Like one of the things that I look at when you talk future agenda, I know you're looking for Sherry and you're looking for Matthew to guide you as to what's coming up next. But you have the same ability to say, you know what, we need to have a discussion on sustainability in this community. And let's agendize, let's get that discussion going. Or we need to have a discussion on alternative business practices. And what can we think about and how can we bring alternative businesses to this community instead of this conundrum that we're in regarding tourism. It just seems like that's all we have here is tourist-based businesses or a tourist-based economy. I think it behooves you as the Planning Commission to don't wait for direction, to hop on it. Figure out what you want to do. Get a small committee going. Get a joint committee with some of the players in the community. But don't wait to be directed. Run with it. I'd rather have someone that I have reins that I'm directing versus having to whip you into, doing something. That comes back from an old supervisor telling me two types of employees. The kind you want to guide and the kind you want to whip. You don't want to whip anybody. You want someone moving forward. You just want to passively help them get to where they're going. And that's what we need as a community. So part of the leadership that I sense comes from this group. So don't wait for us to direct you. Hop on it. If you want to do something about water, and you feel that this is the place to do it, do it. I'm open to it. I'm open to any type of discussion that's going to make this community a better place to live in. And I'm open to any discussion that's going to eliminate the me versus you or because you don't agree with me, therefore you have no standing. And the reality is, all arguments in this community are valid. It's how we communicate those differences, I think, is what's important and what we're losing. But having said that, we need to take the energy that is here and move it to something that's more constructive. And I think this commission, and I think all of our commissions, could be a big part of that. So, again, don't wait for us to direct you. If you choose to do it, follow your bliss and go for it. And then the last thing was, Steve, it was interesting when you talked about banners for the downtown section. I said the very same thing. It was one of the first discussions I had as a councilman, and my thought was the same thing. We're debating banners. We don't have bigger and more important things to do, but there is an ordinance, and there an HPC does have a justifiable reason to want input as to what's going to be hung on a historical building in our town. So,
banner on a landmark.
Right. So I had to learn it. And again, it took a little education because I wasn't 100% behind it. It was like, really? But all cities have that. So, and if there's anything that you guys would like to ask me, I'm open for any questions.
Any questions for Councilmember Haney? We will see you next Tuesday.
You guys are right on time.
At the councilman's recommendation, I'd like to suggest that at a future meeting, not necessarily the next one, that we explore as an agenda item what things we might do in terms of land use in the city, since that is our purview, that might attract new and different kinds of businesses here.
Right.
I think another question too is regarding land use might be infrastructure and things that we're lacking and things that we need to bring in different types of businesses. You know, our Wi-Fi or not our Wi-Fi, but our telecommunication systems are outdated and slow. There's a lot of things that we need to address as a community to enhance a different type of business practices that we're looking for. The other thing is again, to me, is you can't throw away what you have. You know, you need to progressively move towards the direction you want to go. And you know what? We don't know what that direction is. We just know that where we're at, there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable with it. I think we all understand the importance of where we are. But if we want to move forward, if we want to go somewhere, you just don't run there. You got to have a plan. You got to think it through, and you got to have a community discussion about it. Because if you get everyone behind you, look at the skate park, look at Libby Bowl, look at all the good things that have come across this community in the last 10, 15 years. It's because we all did it together. Look at the Golden State and what Flo did. It took them 8 years, but it took this community and took them 2 years to get everyone behind them. So it's a process. But all of the good that has come from this community is because we're all buying in and we all want it to go that way. So, and it has to start somewhere. So feel free, you guys jump on it. I would look forward to that conversation.
Good. Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.